Hi-Lux is a company best known for making replica antique optics, but this is anything but a 19th century rifle scope. This is the CMR, a modern 1-to-8 power LPVO that claims to have daylight bright illumination, and we're going to see if that's true or just snake oil on this episode. For the sake of brevity, I'm going to skip the typical fumbling unboxing, and I'm going to just show you what you get in the box. Alright, so those are the contents. Let's take a look at this optic. This is the Hi-Lux CMR 1-to-8 by 24mm LPVO. It has a 30mm tube and a 24mm objective, and we can see here is quite a nice looking piece. Provides a good texture, good amount of friction to manipulate it even in cold with gloved hands or in the wet. It's powered by a single 2032 battery under the turret here with the illumination rheostat. And interestingly enough, it has 10 different settings for intensity of illumination of the fiber optic, though the max is actually says max instead of 10, which is unusual. Perhaps they just didn't want to confuse people with ones and zeros next to the 0, which is the off. Also, interestingly, it has two off settings. It doesn't have an off in between each of the intensity settings like some more tactical LPVOs, but it does have a second off setting in between the 5 and the 6. So that just means that you don't have to turn it all the way, do a full rotation to turn it off. These are capped turrets, again with nice knurling there on the cap. Let's take a look at this windage and elevation turret. One of the things I don't like about a lot of these low-profile turrets is that the indicator for the number is way down here, and there's a gap for the threading for the turret itself. So sometimes it's hard to figure out if it is exactly aligned. Whatever. It is what it is. Let me know in the comments if you found that annoying. You can unscrew that screw there and then pop it off and reset it. And as you heard, it's very loud. So that's nice. And it is tactile. I can tell when, I can feel when it's indexing. And there's no slop on this. And our windage is just as loud. Again, not super tactile, but just tactile enough, and there's no slop on this either. All right, let's take a look at our magnification ring. Ooh, this is very smooth. You can hear a little bit of rubbing right around there, but it is pretty smooth, and I like the fact that it's not stiff at all, just the right amount of resistance. You really don't even need the throw lever, and can you take this off? Yes, you can. You can unscrew that should you want to run without a throw lever. Let's just check out. Also smooth. Oh, and it has a little indicator, a very small dot, or maybe that's a dent. Is that a dot intentional? I'm not sure, but pretty smooth. Nice. Let's take this outdoors and see how well it performs. Okay, we're looking through the Hi-Lux CMR-B at its lowest power of 1, and let me just loosen up this tripod here and we'll just take a look, because really this at 1 power is where most people really are going to be living with their LPVOs, and let's just get an idea of the kind of view we're getting. Now I notice here that we are getting a bit of offset, a distortion in the image inside of the scope versus outside of the scope, and we can see that here with that green car. It looks a little bit higher up inside of the scope than it does in the real world. And you can see that as we go into the other cars there. The position of the cars does shift, which is kind of an indication of a distortion in parallax, but it only affects sort of vertical alignment. Now, in terms of an overall fisheye distortion effect, it's fairly minimal, and we can take a look at the telephone pole there on the right side. Now, but if you notice the telephone pole outside of the scope image up here, the transformer there, the telephone pole is definitely offset from the position of the telephone pole inside of the scope, so that is a bit disappointing. But if we're looking at the straightness of the telephone pole inside of the scope, the distortion is pretty minimal. So that's good, but it is, the parallax shift is a bit disappointing. All right, let's take a look at higher magnifications here for longer range. And I'm going to bring this up to about halfway, which is 4 power. And overall, the image is still pretty darn good. And let's bring it up to its maximum of 8 power. And let's just shift up our view to the top of the hill there. That's Mount Davidson, which is 1,400 yards away. And see if we can catch any of our reference points. I can kind of barely make out this white object near the top of the hill, to the top, above and to the right of the center crosshairs. That is a trail marker sign at the top of the hill, which is a 36-inch tall sign on top of a pole, which is a good proxy for an IPSC target at this distance. Now, this would also be a good opportunity to see what the illumination is like. And let's just go straight to its maximum here. Let's go 6, 7, 8, 9, max. And that is pretty bright, but more importantly, is it bright when you bring it down to 1 power and just look at broad daylight? Let's bring it up to the sky. I can still see that. I can still see that dot. So yeah, that's pretty darn bright. And even if I bring it almost to where the sun is, directly overhead, that's pretty darn visible. So yeah, I'd say that's daylight bright. And this is important because, you know, if you're, let me turn off the illumination. If your crosshairs are in a darkened or very cluttered, busy background, it's easy enough. It's really easy to lose, especially under recoil, like I'm shaking the camera here to simulate that. To find your crosshairs again can be challenging, but once you have the illumination on, it's certain what you're aiming at. So this is a daylight bright reticle. All right, next let's take it out to the range, and I've set up some reference targets, and while I'm walking back to the benches, do me a favor, hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell buttons right now. It just takes a second, and I'll get set up at the 100-yard bench. All right, we are looking through the Hi-Lux CMR at 1 power at a reference targets downrange at 100 yards. And let's just bring up our magnification up halfway to 4, see what our image looks like. And let me just bring down our exposure a little bit. And let's bring it up to 8 power. That'll be a good time to check out our range of adjustments here on our turret. So, for those of you who are interested, now these are capped turrets, so it's not like you're going to be adjusting these on the fly. But that's the top. Yeah, it's not like you can, these are turrets designed to dial in dope. Oh, that was the very bottom, by the way. And let's bring this back to its 0 point. Alright, now let's check out our windage. And that's as far right as it'll go. And that's as far left as it will go. No dead clicks, so that's good. And let's just bring this back. And it returned back to its original spot, which is equivalent to a box test, but let's just do a box test. Let's do a full rotation on our elevation, full rotation on our windage. Let's bring this back, elevation back to 0, and bring our windage back to 0. And we are back in our original location. Alright, we moved up to 50 yards and we're looking through the CMR again at its lowest power of 1, and let's bring this up to halfway to 4. And let's adjust that exposure a little bit here. And let's bring this up to its maximum now of 8. All right, I made a still image here so we can look at our overall image and our reference targets in greater detail. Now, the first thing that strikes me is how much light that we're getting through, how bright the image is, because I had to step down on our exposure, but I can see clearly individual hits onto the steel backstop behind our target, quite clearly. Looking at our color reference chart on the top left, there is a definite brownish tint on the color overall. And I can see chromatic aberration. That's the purple fringe along the bottom and the left edge of the target board. This is a prismatic effect of light going through the scope at high magnification. Despite that, there is enough sharpness that I can make out some fine details. In the rifle target on the bottom left, not only can you make out the hits on the reactive sticker target in the center, but I can barely make out two tiny .22 caliber holes below that sticker target. And on our U.S. Air Force optical resolution chart on the bottom right, I can make out both horizontal and vertical lines down to element 1 and group -1. And despite its chromatic aberration, as you can see, the image is usably sharp and clear. In fact, when I was doing live fire testing of the scope to see if it held zero, at 100 yards, I could easily make out the diamond reference targets, even the small diamond targets, 100 yards downrange. Alright, before we start talking about the Hi-Lux CMR8, do me a favor and hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell buttons right now. It just takes a second, and it's absolutely free. And you're watching this video, you're getting some good information out of it, and obviously you're enjoying it enough to still be watching it at this point, so do me a solid and return the favor. And speaking of appreciation, I want to thank Hi-Lux for sending this out for me to test and evaluate. And as you saw in my testing, it performed quite well. It is certainly daylight bright, as they claim. Even in broad daylight looking straight into the sky, I could see the dot quite clearly. And I had inadvertently tested the battery life on this thing because I forgot to turn it off, and 6.5 days later, it is still daylight bright looking through this thing. So their claims of 300 hours of battery life appear to be pretty legit. In terms of overall performance, good clarity and brightness and sharpness through the glass. Now, there was a bit of a disappointment in terms of the distortion that I was seeing at 1 power. As you saw there, the kind of fish-eyeing effect. And I know in film and video terms, because I come from that world, that's not a real fish-eye lens. What I'm saying is that it has distortion. As you're moving this around, you can see the curvature of your image versus, if you're looking at 1 power through both eyes, you can see that change. Plus, there's also a parallax shift. The objects inside of the view of the scope weren't exactly in the same position once you passed the view of the scope. Now, that is disappointing, but I have to say, in all fairness, I've seen this kind of effect in even more expensive scopes. I saw that in a Trijicon over Chacho recently, and I've had that experience with Vortexes. I don't know if you've had the same experience with other premium quality scopes. Please let me know in the comments, but I think this is fairly common. It's not uncommon, though I think it should be. But, so it's par for the course, so to speak. And certainly this is nowhere near the price range of a Trijicon 1-8. In fact, I think this is a good value at under $500. In fact, I think I saw it recently on Amazon for under $400. So if you're interested in picking one up, I'll include product links as well as more information in my full written review at moondogindustries.com. Use that link to help support this channel. And I want to thank Hi-Lux again for sending this out, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. You be safe out there. Moondog, out. Hey, I'd like to know what you thought of this video. Leave me a comment or chat with me on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, MeWe, Instagram, or Locals. And if you want to see all of my videos, go to moondogindustries.com.